Hey guys, what's up? Dingo Crikey here with another commentary video. This time I'm going to be discussing a theory on how we might see the Star Saber Sword appear in Transformers 5. So this is a viewer suggested topic by user Jose Vidal, and I wanted to give extra kudos to that user because they've suggested other good topics which I've used for videos in the past. So thanks a lot for the suggestion, and to that user or anyone else watching this, feel free to submit your own topic suggestions. As we're nearing the time of Transformer 5's production, we should start getting some info leaks like on-set images, plot details. Some time will still need to pass before we see any images of toys, but overall, there should be a lot of stuff to talk about. As for this suggestion, I can't remember the exact wording in the comment, but I believe it was basically asking for my thoughts on us seeing the Star Saber in Transformers 5. And when I originally seen the comment, I thought, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. The idea we would see the Star Saber Sword appear in Transformers 5, but it didn't really seem tangible or anything. I mean, there's a lot of really great creative ideas we've had throughout the years of Transformers lore, but obviously they're not all going to make their way into these films. And I figured the Star Saber Sword was another one of these things. Then I remembered a key concept that was introduced in Age of Extinction. The Knights that Optimus Prime was supposedly part of, and out of anything that has been introduced in the film so far, I think that this would be the best thing to catapult the Star Saber into the BayFormers universe. But for those who may be newer fans or just not as up to date on their Transformers history, I figured I would give some background as to what exactly is this Star Saber Sword and why it is significant. And I might leave out a few details here and there, and I'm sure, some of you who know TF history better than I do might be able to pick these out, but I'm just trying to give an overall idea. The Transformers franchise first heard the term Star Saber in 1989 when it was used as the name for a key character in the Japanese Transformers cartoon Transformers Victory. But as I just mentioned, this was a character, and though the character wielded a sword, he isn't exactly what we're going to be talking about here. Now, the Star Saber Sword was first introduced in the 2002 Toyline comic and cartoon series Transformers Armada, or Micron Legend as it was known in Japan. The earlier episodes of Transformers Armada focused around the Autobots and Decepticons at war as usual, but this time they're fighting over a smaller race of Transformers known as Minicons, who, when attached to either Autobot or Decepticon, could be used to enhance the user's power. It was sort of a catch-em-all type thing, a lot different than the Minicons we see in the Robots in Disguise series. Anyways, in the series there existed 3 unique Minicon trio teams who formed weapons. One of these weapons was the Star Saber, so these 3 aircraft Minicons could transform and combine in a sword, and in the show they had a glow around the blade of the sword, sort of like a lightsaber. Actually, a lot like a lightsaber, because it was basically a really powerful item. It could deflect shots, it could cut through various objects such as thick rocks, trees, Transformers bodies with really little effort. And after Armada ended, it really didn't have a formal appearance in any series until 2009 with Transformers Prime. However, this Star Saber wasn't comprised of Minicons. Basically, it was an ancient Cybertronian weapon that was stashed in a vault and sent into space for protection. It ended up on Earth, stuck in a big, huge rock, and you kind of had a King Arthur thing going on where Optimus was the only one who was able to retrieve the sword despite Megatron's best efforts. Now, I could be wrong here, but I think it was that Optimus was a Prime, and that was the reason he was able to retrieve the sword. Transformers Prime had a big emphasis on the significance of the primes and that whole thing, as the name would imply. But basically, the sword was not only a powerful weapon that could cut through almost anything it met in direct contact, but it also had abilities such as firing massive destructive waves of energy, which are so powerful that Optimus is able to use them to take down the Decepticon ship, the Nemesis, with just using one of these waves instead of slicing it with the actual sword. So there may be a few other minor uses of the Star Saber Sword, but I think I've covered the major ones. So maybe you think the Star Saber Sword sounds really cool, or an overpowered weapon that Kirito from SAO would probably have. But either way, the question of course comes up, why would this be used in the film as opposed to any other cool concept, contraption, or character in TF lore? And my answer to this is the idea of the Knights. Age of Extinction made a pretty big emphasis of this, and it doesn't seem like they would just toss it under the rug after the build-up in Age of Extinction, as the whole concept really didn't meet its climax in my opinion, and considering that Optimus being a knight was one of the reasons that the creators wanted him so badly, it's likely that it will be brought up again, especially if Optimus has contact with the creators in the next film. And obviously, knights are a type of historical warrior which used swords, as Optimus also did in the film, so yeah, we would expect them to have swords, even though Grimlock's a knight and he doesn't use one. But anyways, what do we know about these movie-verse knights? Really nothing at this point. I mean, a little bit, but not a whole lot. I mean, despite the concept being a driving factor for the events in Age of Extinction, it really isn't mentioned a whole lot in the film, and to my knowledge wasn't mentioned at all in the previous films. Now, what we do know is that Optimus and the Dinobots were members. Optimus doesn't seem to have any recollection of, being a knight, at least not that I caught. However, blades and swords have always been choice weapons for him, so even if he doesn't, consciously remember, he might still have, the muscle memory or just be used to using them in combat, that kind of thing. Lockdown has been capturing the knights because the creators apparently want them, and they seem to wield handheld, short-ranged weapons as opposed to projectiles. Their weapons varying from swords, shields, mace-type things, or whatever the weapon Grimlock had in the film. Now, I do believe the IDW comic books for the 2007 movie had introduced the concept of knights. However, the storyline of these knights didn't seem to line up with what we've seen in the movie so far, and if you have the same ideas that I do, you're probably thinking the film is going to ditch any prequel material that was established for the previous trilogy. So I think the idea of knights is definitely a good window for the Star Saber Sword. I mean, as we know hardly anything about Transformers 5 at this point, it's all just speculation, but it does seem like a probable concept for the films. It wouldn't be totally random at this point. I think they could fit it in pretty easily. How would it happen, or kind of like a theory on it? For one, looking at the film's track record, I doubt they're going to take either of the Star Saber's origin stories and follow them to a T. However, I think the rendition that we would see in the films would be much closer to that in Transformers Prime, being that it doesn't seem likely the films is going to introduce minicons into the plot, and if they do, they'd probably be similar to what we've seen in Robots in Disguise, or maybe some of the smaller Transformers like Frenzy and Wheelie are going to kind of just count as minicons in the movieverse. Who really knows what they're doing with that, but I don't see them introducing the whole concept of them collecting a bunch of minicons into the movieverse. It would just be too much. So I think they would definitely go with something more similar to what we've seen in Transformers Prime. In short, I think that the Star Saber will be treated as some kind of an ancient weapon, maybe used by the knights in the past, or the ones who came before Optimus, something like that. Or maybe it hasn't been used by the knights, and it was made by someone such as Alpha Trion, and in whatever scenario, the sword has been hidden away in a secret place, and eventually Optimus Prime finds it, kind of does one of those whole recognize one of your knights things that he did in Age of Extinction, and uses the sword to fight the creators and or Galvatron. That is, if we see him returning to Earth in Transformers 5, but I think they could make this a little bit more interesting. I think that it would be really cool if they expanded upon this idea of Optimus being a knight, and what exactly that means. Whether it's him trying to recollect what his past memories were of being a knight, as he doesn't seem to have a whole lot of memory of it from what we've seen in Age of Extinction, or him going inside of the Matrix just to look for long-lost memories of the Primes, to learn who really are these creators, whether through his own memories or through the Matrix, as we see in G1, Optimus Prime going inside of the Matrix. So it's definitely a cool concept, and I think it would be really cool visually too to see him like flying through space and them kind of transitioning it through a whole, like, literally flying through time. So it'd be kind of like flying through space and time, which would be kind of cool. And so at a certain point, we're probably going to expect him to meet up with some other Autobots or guys to help him out, and probably some minions of the creators at very least, if not the creators themselves. But either after this or in the midst of this, like maybe after a battle with some of their minions and realizing how strong they were, I think Optimus could have a vision in which he sees the Star Saber, and at which point he goes to retrieve it and to basically use that in his fight. Maybe even the current sword, which he has, I think he still had at the end of Age of Extinction, is destroyed, and he replaces it with the Star Saber. And maybe they could even take from that whole King Arthur thing they had going on in Transformers Prime, where Optimus communicates with the previous Primes or the Knights and basically convinces them, or they see that he is worthy to take the sword, and from that point on, yeah, Optimus would have the Star Saber, probably at least for the remainder of the movie. And if they were going to introduce the Star Saber in this kind of fashion, I would think and I would hope it wouldn't be the central focus of the movie. It might just be something else he picks up along the way, because between Galvatron, the storyline on Earth, the creators, all the cool things we could see there, as cool as it would be to see the Star Saber, I wouldn't want it taking up like a huge focus in the movie. I think that in the Knight thing needs its time, but it shouldn't dominate the plot of the movie, or his finding the Star Saber shouldn't be the climax, because that would be kind of similar to what we've seen in Age of Extinction with him finding the sword and beating up the Dinobots, all that kind of stuff. But anyways, that's a possible theory I'm throwing out there, and once again, this could be totally off because we don't have any plot details about Transformers 5 at this point. I mean, who knows, they could ditch the concept of knights and not really touch on it any further, or maybe we really won't see Optimus's journeys in space and he'll already be on Earth by the time the movie starts, though I think they already mentioned the film's going to follow two different directions, so I guess we'll just have to see. Do I think something like this will happen, even if it's not my exact theory? Would we see the Star Saber appear in Transformers 5? I actually think it has a greater chance than a lot of other things that have been speculated about, such as, let's say, Nemesis Prime showing up, or guys like Starscream returning. This actually seems like it would fit in pretty well. One of the main reasons for that being this whole concept of the Knights. Like I said, it doesn't seem like they would just introduce it and then drop it off right away, when the people behind these new movies have tried to make it clear that they care about them a little bit more than I guess the people working on the previous trilogy did. And if they're going with the idea of knights with swords and that kind of thing, what better weapon than the Star Saber? I mean, if they went off of something like they had in Transformers Prime where it was huge, I mean, maybe even a smaller Dinobot could use it because it was a pretty big sword, or it could be at least used to fight with massive Transformers like that, especially with the large energy waves. So it definitely would fit in pretty well, and I don't know, maybe like a 60% chance we could see it at this point. Anyways, that is a really, really rough figure, as we have no idea of what TF5 is actually going to be like at this point, and, one bit of information could really change all these theories. But anyways, those are my thoughts on it. Seems like a kind of probable idea, and I think it would be pretty cool as long as it doesn't dominate the film. Anyways, that wraps up my thoughts on it. You guys can leave yours in the comment section below. If you would like to hear me expand upon any of the topics I touched on in this video, then you can let me know in the comment section below. If you're interested in more Transformers 5 predictions and news, you can check out my playlist and channel where I have like close to 50 videos exclusively discussing Transformers 5 and a whole bunch of other videos on other Transformers stuff. You can also keep up with me on YouTube or Twitter for more content, updates, news, and more cool stuff. Anyways, that's all I have to say for now. Thanks for watching, stay tuned, and have a good one, guys. I'll see you soon.